50 cents to $1 for a cotton picker.
A day. So it ain't even on the list.
No.
They ain't even put that. Why they ain't got cotton picker on there?
Gin operator worker. That ain't on here. A gin operator worker earns 75 cents to $1.25 a day.
So everything up there, they left off the slave work. They left off what we do. They left off the cotton picker and the gin worker.
Says
they was making 50 cents, 75 cents.
Skilled laborer, which was rare. It was rare that a slave had the job of a skilled worker, even though he possessed all the damn skills.
Right.
He made $1.50 a day.
That ain't up there either.
No.
So that's what the oppressor made.
This is what they made. This is what they themselves paid their people.
So he was talking about the overseer that was working and stuff like that.
$19.80 a week.
They got paid the most for making sure the slaves picked the cotton.
They had the tour guides dressed like it was 1700s. I'd never seen that before. And one of the women came out dressed like antebellum. It was like that. And again, we didn't even really get rolling yet. Welcome to Halifax District. Halifax, Tennessee, the birthplace of the American independence. Who would have ever thought people would go to Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh and all these other places first, not realizing how big of a role the 12th colony played inside of this. And this looks like downtown Halifax. Just look at the roads. Get this. Look. This looks like downtown Halifax. Now, it's a country town. You don't expect too much activity in the morning in country towns, but still. Their district is like the size of a regular country downtown. We're about to see something today. I don't know what. We're going to see something. I already seen enough so far. Not just here. We saw some things that weren't on camera, but when we went to Stagville over there in Durham, the slave plantation is about 30,000 acres big, about the size of San Francisco. A lot of private corporations own portions of that land now, but I realized that they had plantations both here and in Alabama or Mississippi, Louisiana. And they made their slaves walk from Stagville all the way down to Alabama, long as walk. But that being said, I'm seeing Lafayette, because you have Lafayette, the city in Louisiana, then you have Fayetteville here in North Carolina, but all deriving from the same name, Lafayette. So I realized how a lot of that's combined, and when it comes to slavery, or it comes to that history, there's key names all throughout. Whenever you look up the history, there's key names, and then there's smaller names underneath it. So we're putting the pieces together. I'm starting to see something here. Interesting stuff.
So taverns in colonial North Carolina, as in other parts of the country, were a vital part of the local economy and lifestyle. Travelers could find a place to sleep and meal to eat as they made their way across the state. Local citizens used taverns for meetings, entertainment, and business transactions, including the sale of land and slaves.
Right here, we stepping where they decided to make America born.
They decided to make America born.
Yeah. They created a beast.
This was the beginning of the laboratory that the Negro was going to be created in.
Yeah.
Like Bishop Rial said.
Yeah, man. That's exactly what it is.
Ready. Reset. Fire. So Halifax Resolves happens April 12th of 1776. That gives permission to our representatives to sign the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia. Declaration of Independence happens on July 4th. August 1st of 1776, the first official reading of the Declaration of Independence happens here in Halifax. It happens up where the 18th century courthouse was. You'll go over there later on today. The British pushed the militia out and spend about 10 days here in Halifax before moving north to join other British forces in Virginia. While they're in Virginia, they get orders to go to a deep water port. which turns out to be Yorktown. And while it's there, they find themselves surrounded by French and American forces. And by October, they're surrendering to George Washington. And that's the last major battle of the war, although the war goes on from there until 1783 when a peace treaty is finally signed. So folks, if you want to come with me, we're going to walk down to the Burgess Law Office and we can take a look inside this building.
Okay.
The house, there's a hallway on one side and then a parlor. That larger room is called a parlor. When Thomas Burgess passes away, also in his will, it says that this house becomes the property of a woman named Ianthea, who appears as probably an enslaved individual also, or a free African-American woman, probably a free African-American woman who he gives this house to when he passes away. And there's kind of a big, his wife eventually sues that the will wasn't fair. And so there's some contention between him and his wife around, in his will even, where he talks about, he has some sort of snarky comments in there, like, if she's not happy with what she gets, I also included, a horse and carriage, and she can go back to her family. Something really mean and snarky in there. Right. Yeah.
I noticed when we went towards the Thomas Burgess Law Office, I want to say this, or courthouse, it was one of the two. We went there. And we only went literally maybe 50 yards away from the main check-in location from the tour. And that was all that he actually showed us, because a lot of what they had out there was a lot of history that was just bang right there inside of our face. So we went there, and when we wound up talking to the guy, he confirmed something that I always knew, right? In episode 1, went to the Mordecai Plantation and the Duke Homestead. If you remember in episode 1, if you paid attention, Washington Duke, the Cameron family, and Moses/Jacob Mordecai played a big part inside of the start of North Carolina over in this area. Washington Duke, he played a big part inside of the tobacco that actually got shipped all throughout toward China, as you see the maps show. When we went toward the Duke Homestead, towards China, Thailand, Mongolia, all places all throughout the world, they shipped a lot of tobacco all throughout the world from that homestead and within Durham, right? Well, the interesting part that I found is that here at the Halifax, inside of Halifax, they had a lot of not only crops, tobacco, of course, but they shipped it, and they made sure that a lot of the food that they had cultivated here within Halifax, they had shipped it down to the Caribbean and Bermuda. The reason why I like to emphasize Bermuda is because of this. Stay tuned for season 2. By the way, just a little sneak preview, right? But there's a very big portion of the Plymouth Company and the London Company that played a part inside of the coastal buildup of America, with Bermuda being one of the stopping points to coming towards North America, and in particular the 12th colony, that would be North and South Carolina.
They would do fishing in the Roanoke River. There were a lot of fisheries on the Roanoke River. Herring was one of the main, also shad, striped bass. These are all fish that are caught here in the Roanoke River. Wow. Some of this fish is being salted, and it's going to be used as food on plantations as part of the rations for enslaved individuals. It's also, some of it's going to be shipped out of here, and it's going to go as far away as the Caribbean. Port records show that we're shipping fish to the Caribbean, and I believe that one of the reasons for that is because these islands, the Caribbean islands, had been everything was turned over to sugar production on a lot of these Caribbean islands, and so they had to import food to the islands so that the enslaved individuals there would have food to eat while they were there. So they had to import food to the Caribbean, and also building materials like timber for building houses.
I heard that before. Over in Stagville,
yeah,
they had the same similar thing,
yeah,
about having timber and whatnot. My question is, do you know what port that they favored?
For here, it would have been Port Roanoke, and during a lot of the colonial period, that is Edenton, North Carolina today. Okay. Yeah. Also, some goods are going to be shipped by wagon over land to the James River and to Yorktown and to Norfolk at times as well.
One more question. You said they had shipped food from here down to the Caribbean.
That's
Did
right.
they also ship food from here to Bermuda at any point?
I believe so, yeah. The shipping records, there's a lot of trade with Bermuda. Bermuda is one of those important places where you can bring on fresh water in a transatlantic voyage. So from this, pretty early on when transatlantic voyages started happening, Bermuda was kind of a place where you could get some fresh water and supplies for crossing the Atlantic.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it's all kind of based on the Gulf Stream and the winds, and all that affects how the ships cross the Atlantic as well. The portrait above the fireplace over there, that man's name is Frederick Sterling Marshall. And he was an apothecary, so he ran a drugstore here in Halifax in the mid 19th century. He was friends with Thomas Burgess, but that portrait probably wasn't hanging over the fireplace when Thomas Burgess. He's a man from the same time period as Thomas Burgess, dressed the way men dressed back then, and so it fit in well over top of the fireplace there.
Hey, one more question. Is there any relationship, not so much family, but maybe trade that this family had here on this plantation with the Cameron and Vernon family over in Stag?
Yeah, there is. I don't know about Burgess necessarily, but there are families here in Halifax that are trading with the Benton families. Yeah. In fact, I feel like William R. Davey, some of his family is interconnected. They were friends, or families were interconnected.
Right.
A lot of these big plantation owners, the families are interconnected. You see a lot of the families on, the Roanoke River eventually, purchasing land further inland as well, also, and starting plantations. A lot of people from Halifax eventually in the early 19th century wind up going out to Louisiana, purchase property as well, like places like Louisiana and Alabama. A lot of people move out there in the early 19th century as well.
Mississippi also.
Yeah. Tobacco depletes the land, and so these kind of like second generation of planters, a lot of them were kind of starting new plantations further west.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, new plantations for the what?
Further west.
Yeah, so that for tobacco mostly.
Oh, okay.
And further west, like Louisiana and the purchased lands as well. Yeah. And some people even refer to that as like a second passage, because there's a number of enslaved individuals also that were forced to cross to this kind of central United States area as well. There's a man named James Williams who comes through Halifax. He's a freedom seeker on the Underground Railroad.
Yes.
Probably our best recorded freedom seeker. He writes a memoir after he makes it to freedom. He was living in Richmond, and he was basically working as a valet to the slaveholder, and he goes to set up this new plantation in Alabama. And he wakes up in the morning, and the slaveholder's gone, and the overseer's there, and the overseer says to him, the slaveholder left, and he left you here. You're going to be an assistant to me now on this new plantation. He didn't have the heart to tell you. And James Williams had family still in Richmond, so he's separated from his family. But he tries to make the best of it until eventually the overseer turns out to be an alcoholic and is violent, and James Williams is afraid he's going to try and kill him. So one day he walks away, and he walks all the way from Alabama back to Richmond, and on the way he goes through Halifax and swims across the Roanoke River in October in a rainstorm. He went through some really challenging times. He makes it to Richmond, he reconnects with family. He can't stay there long. He makes it all the way up to New York, where he gets involved with abolitionists to eventually publish his memoir. But to actually hold on to his freedom, he has to leave the country, and he goes all the way to Liverpool, England. And the abolitionists that publish his memoir mention, this is kind of ironic, that in America they had fought a war for liberty against Great Britain. This man now has to go to England to get his own liberty. Yeah. Any questions about this building?
No.
Yeah, I'm sure I went over on my time, so we should probably go up to the tap room, and I'll connect you with Crystal, and she'll take you on the next part of the tour.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Earlier jail was located at. There were 3 jails at different times. You know what I mean? So each time a jail burnt down there, they built a new one. And so there have been 3 on that lot at different, not at the same time, but different times. Okay. When they built the 1838 jail, which is the one you're looking at, they tried to make it a little more fireproof and build it out of brick.
Right. They took a lesson from the 3 little pigs. Huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they know me by name up in the jail. You know what I'm saying? Know me by name up in the jail. I probably was up in this one in 1850.
Lord of mercy.
Damn, sleeping on that right there. Look, they got shackles in there too, bro.
It's a little heavy too.
She heavy.
So around 1850, the county remodeled the jail and added a raised wooden floor to improve air circulation and maintain a drier atmosphere. The new design reflected the layout you see today with 2 small cells and a larger one. The smaller cells in front may have housed male and female inmates each, while African Americans of both sexes probably stayed in the larger cell to the rear. So this right here, you had Esau and them was all comfortable.
Yeah, separated.
Yeah, they separated and chilling. They straight.
Did you go upstairs?
I want to see what it look like in the back. On the wall right there.
So this is the cell for Jacob. Storage area. Oh, that's how they make sure them things and them bars don't come out. We moved on over to the jail. Now the jail was kind of interesting in itself because from the outside it doesn't appear to be a normal jail or what you would think a jail would look like. But once you step foot inside the jail, you get that same eerie feeling that you always get. It's like something happened here. So as we touring the jail, we're noticing the size difference of the doors, that this building was actually built around the jail. So we go inside, we're moving, we're looking around, and kind of notice how the jail cells are separate. You got one on the front, has windows, it has ventilation. When you go around to the back side, there's an even bigger cell with no ventilation. And it's just one big room. Now, we didn't notice at that time, but that jail was also used to house runaway slaves. As we were making our way around through the tour, we stumbled upon a door in the floor. Now, it might not have stood out to anybody else, but it caught my attention because this is a structure that's built in 1800s that had no ductwork for ventilation, but there's a trap door. But when you go outside at the same location, there are bars at the bottom of the house. Just piques my curiosity. Why would I need bars on a crawl space? A lot of questions begin to arise, and it opens the door to a lot more than what's being told on the tour guide. Ventilation. This didn't have modern ventilation. So you have to ask yourself, who was housed
down here.
Mm-hmm.
So we gonna have another one right there.
As we were in there, she actually spoke about the prison. We didn't go into the prison. That was a you on your own type deal. You go through it. You go through it on your own. And so, as we went through it, we did see a trap door. We saw the fact that our people, men, women, were put inside the same cell versus for Esau, they in different areas, or they got a separation, like I said, ventilation and things like that, and we didn't. And so as we was going into the print house, and as she was explaining the different things that was going on, I actually asked her, I said, what would be the reason that a slave would be put into that prison? She said the main reason was if they wanted freedom. If they wanted freedom, they got locked up. And so I asked her if there were children inside the prison. And she took a deep breath, like, yes, some women had babies inside of the prison. So our sisters was having kids in prison, going from the prison, being sold off the front porch of that Congress building, right there, the old courthouse. So you had that going on, and mind you, she did not speak of this without us asking. She was going and, hey, you got any questions for me? And so I just started asking her about slavery and things like that, and it flowed right out as though she didn't even have to think of the history, letting us know that they tell these things to others, their own, that come there and ask about the history. But when we show up, or our people want to know the history, they ignore those things and talk about America as though it was just out of the blue such a great place for everybody, when we all understand that's not the case. And so we noticed that, and I noticed that was what she was doing. So we started asking those questions, and she was going a little more into the history. And so another things that she actually mentioned about the slave was that they had insurance. If they hung a slave, they paid the owner for them to go get another one. So they had insurance on our people then. And it wasn't something that they had to sign up for. It was literally that was just the norm, that if they hung a slave and killed them, everybody would come to that market to see us in the different chains and shackles, and they would hang us publicly. And when they would do so, they would give the slave owner of that slave the money's worth to go and get another one, because they felt like they owed it to him. Mind you, the slave, we got family members. Nobody cared about that, about our people. And she didn't talk about it. Neither one of them talked about it, her or the man. Neither one of them talked about it.
Is there anything so far, anything you've seen that I can shed some light on or give you a little more information about?
What was the average number of prisoners held in that jail on a consistent basis?
So, we don't know that for sure. That jail was in operation all the way till 1919. We do know they had to expand it, and they even had it plumbed for a while. So, they had bathrooms in their cells. But the original jail, the one that was holding POWs, we know that it had 26 at one time, and that was overcrowded. So, don't think that we had as many there. Jail back then was completely different. It was more of a corporal. We're just holding people here until they see the judge, and then the judge is going to give them their sentence. Right here across the street, this is Market Square. We're in downtown Halifax, which today means it's a pretty quiet, peaceful place. Back then, everybody was out there.
Okay.
And
buying, selling, and trading.
Yeah, so everybody will be coming to look at you. They might be, making fun of you,
Throwing
jeering
stuff at
at
you.
you, throwing stuff at you.
Wow.
And the sheriff deputy would be standing there guarding you, and he'd probably be egging them on, telling you, yeah, you know what, you deserve that. You shouldn't have stole that pig, or whatever. So those were for minor crimes. They also did whippings. They also did brandings. There is an example that's actually on the wayside over here of a man who was found guilty of stealing horses, and so they branded an H on one cheek and an S on the other cheek. Horse stealer. Wow. So you saw him coming and you knew not to trust him with your horse. Those were the more typical punishments, but they also, of course, hung folks quite regularly, and there was actually a gallows somewhere on what they called the common land, which was back behind Market Square over here where the trees are.
Okay. So you said there was a gallows back over here?
Yes.
So they would go from here, and then after whatever judgment is passed, then march them over there into
Yes. 83 delegates coming in. Halifax was a town of taverns. We're here in the middle of a whole bunch of taverns and boarding houses that were here. So the tap room, if the tap room was running as a tavern at that time, it was on that spot. Eagle Tavern was down here where the school is. There was another tavern called Dudley's Tavern, which was right back here, right behind these trees. There was a boarding house, Mrs. Elspeth's boarding house, right over here, kind of on the corner. So they're coming in from all of these places to here to come to work. Guess what they're walking past? Those POWs that are right out here. And they're under guard. We had the militias has got guns on them under guard, but they've actually made a little camp for them because they were too many of them to keep in the jail and keep them in good, hygienic, healthy conditions. So they had them all out here like on the grounds. Those 83 delegates coming in, they were seeing them and they were mad. They were mad at Governor Martin. They were mad at King George III. They were mad at the British Parliament because those men were our fellow North Carolinians. They should have never had to lift a gun against us. Never. But they were tasked to do that. They felt like they had a duty and an obligation, and that's why they did it. But a lot of these guys were friends. They knew each other. So once they got in here, the 83 delegates had word from the Continental Congress up in Philadelphia that they needed to choose 3 delegates to represent North Carolina and to give them direction. What does North Carolina want for them to do, to vote for? What do we want from the Continental Congress? So just like the legislature today, they met in committee and they wrote what they called a report. And they listed out all of their grievances. Of course, taxation without representation, having their ships seized, having their fellow countrymen fight against them. Another one was that they were afraid that Governor Martin was asking enslaved men to also join the British Army and fight against their enslavers. And so that was mentioned in that. And so the final part that
was mentioned as a grievance.
Yes,
as
one of the grievances.
That they were asking the enslaved also to fight against their slave masters.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I do want to jump back before you continue on.
Yes.
To the New Bern thing. You said Josiah Martin.
No.
I might be mixing names up.
No, it's okay. Shoot, now it just went on my head. But yes, Governor Martin.
Governor Martin.
Yeah, that's the right name.
And they had what happened in New Bern again? Was it a rebellion or something?
Yes.
Okay,
so the Sons of Liberty came to Tryon Palace.
Right.
Because Martin had an armory there. He had cannons, he had all of the cannonballs, the gunpowder, everything.
Like a base, pretty much.
Yes,
okay.
he was in there. He had turned that into an armed fort.
And then they rebelled where they had a fort, so that was why it was a big problem.
Yeah, so he had to get out. He barely escaped. They were coming through, and they were going to take those cannons and all of his armaments and confiscate them because they said that was the property of the state of North Carolina, not the property of Governor Martin. And Martin said, you know what, I'll see y'all later. And so he snuck out in the middle of the night.
Is Martin County named after that specific person?
Yes, I think it is. Yeah. Yeah, just like Dobbs Street back here is named for Arthur Dobbs, who was the governor when the town was founded. Yeah. So they wrote this report, and it ended with resolve. We empower our delegates in the Continental Congress to vote with the delegates of the other colonies for independency. And so we were the first to ever put that on paper. It was treason. They could have been hung. But they put it on paper, an official governing body, that we want to be free from Great Britain. So our 3 delegates took that back up to Philadelphia. They read it to everybody. Everybody clapped and cheered and said, woo! Then they said, woo, we got to get us one of those. And they sent back to their governing bodies, like in Virginia it was called the House of Burgesses. And so they all passed similar resolutions, and they brought those back to Philadelphia. And on July 4th of 1776, Thomas Jefferson, with some help from John Adams and Benjamin Franklin, put all of those resolutions together, and with their beautiful words, wrote our Declaration of Independence. We're now a free country. So now the word's got to get back here. We don't have CNN or Fox News. We don't have the internet. We don't even have a telephone. So the way that they do that is they come back here where the Committee of Safety is meeting. And the Committee of Safety is a board that was voted on by the 4th Provincial Congress right before they broke up for the summer. And their purpose was to run the war effort for North Carolina. Because we didn't have a Pentagon, so every state was running their own war efforts. So this Committee of Safety was meeting here during the summer in this courthouse, trying to run the war, do everything that the Pentagon would be doing today. So
one of the things that I saw the tour guides mentioned, and that was mentioned inside of the writing, was how one of the main things that they put was how they had a grievance that the British had the slaves, and y'all see this in movies. Emancipation is a movie that you can watch on Apple TV, by the way. They had an issue with the slaves fighting with the British against their slave owners. In Halifax, they had wrote that up on a script, they had the ink on, they wrote it up, or whatever piece of paper that they had at the time, they wrote it up and they sent it up to Philadelphia. Now that was treason. They could have been killed, the whole town could have been wiped out with prisoners of war, whole nine. It was a civil war and all that other stuff that was going on. There were a lot of problems in the country at the time, right? Going against the British. Like you read inside of Daniel chapter 7 about how 3 horns were plucked up, and one of those horns was the British. So this was the beginning of that horn being plucked up, right? And only to find out that the beginning of it being rooted out was the deception, or rather, I'll say the insurrection per se, of Halifax wanting to be separate from Britain. They said that their issue was that our slaves are starting to fight against us and fight with the Brits. In Philadelphia, which a lot of y'all like to believe that the Union was against, or rather, I'll say they were for the slaves. Well, here's a shocker to you. They didn't care about you slaves.
In honor of Abraham, we have the printing press here. We have a print shop set up. A print shop today is like real easy and quick, and if you want to print something, you hit print on your computer and it runs it off. Back then, this was labor intensive and also smarts. It took a lot of smarts to do this because not only do you need to be able to have the muscle to work this over and over and over again. If you're doing a newspaper and you've got a subscription of 10,000 people, and you're doing a 4-page paper, that's 40,000 pages that you're printing off, and you're trying to print them off in a week. So you're trying to do it as fast as you can. So it takes multiple men. It was usually men that worked in here. They did enslave men working in here too. This was one of the more desirable jobs because guess what? You had to know how to read and write and spell backwards and upside down. Right. So a lot of the men who had experience working in
a print shop like this would also get themselves a little side hustle or be helping somebody out, printing off papers. And that's one of the things that made this a very popular stop on the Underground Railroad, because they were able to come here and get some papers that made it legal for them to travel.
Right.
So they were helping each other out.
That was smart.
Yeah. So I have a mock engraving here of the Halifax Resolves. There, it would have looked nothing like this if we were back there during those times. Yeah, they had to use each individual letter.
Oh, snap.
So these are the letters.
That's why the pages were so big.
Yeah. So not necessarily. They use some little teeny tiny letters. So I'm going to pass these around to y'all. And just, everybody gets to hold them and then give them back to me when you're done. So this big case over here would hold all of your different fonts. So today what we do on a drop down menu on Microsoft Word, they're doing by hand, going in through the drawers, finding the sizes that they need and the style they need, and then putting them all on here one at a time, and like I said, backwards and upside down.
Right.
Then you've got spacers, like these wooden ones here that you see right there. That helps hold them on here and hold them straight so that your types are straight and look neat. Printing is an art. Printing is not just something just anybody can come in and do. Unfortunately, they got me in here and I'm not an artist, so it's going to be coming. My prints are always bad.
Yeah, I wonder how they get the stamps. Like, that was a job making the stamps.
Yeah, and they did a lot of what was called woodcuts, and so they would have someone actually carve in the pictures that they wanted.
Woodcuts.
And I've got an example of that over there on that table.
Okay, so
That's what this is right here.
Yeah.
I just saw this earlier.
yeah, that's
That's
how
a
you
woodcut.
do t-shirt. They used to do t-shirts.
That's right, doing like silk screen. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that when I came over earlier. These
So
little bitty letters.
this is a printer's table, a printer's desk.
See. Some of the slave men could read and write. And so they worked in the slave press. Well, look, I said slave press, 'cause that's what it was, but in the print press. And they had more than what we saw, and they only had one inside the building, but it used to be many. It was two sides to the building. She said it was many there. And so our men desired to be inside of the print press. And the reason why that came about was because our men that worked inside the print press actually forged papers, freedom papers, for our brothers and sisters that was escaping. Because literally, like I said, the street goes straight through the middle of that city at that time for the Underground Railroad. And so they would come there and they would then print the papers and give them to our brothers and sisters. So once they got on the ferry to escape, they had papers that if they got caught anywhere else, it would look as though their papers were signed officially and they were set free, so then they would not be sent back. And so I thought that was really inspiring that our brothers had, and brothers that worked at that time had the courage to do that, because they were literally right next to the jail. If they were caught doing so, they would be hung. They would be put in prison and then hung. And then their slave master would get the money that they was worth to go and buy another one of our people and put them back in slavery all over again. So that stuck out to me a lot, and it's motivation that our people had the courage then to stand up and do something. Those that had the power and the skill set to help, they did so. And that is something that we're trying to do and inspire our people to do today, from the leadership down, the bishops, all the way down to the brothers and the sisters, women, and children. It's motivation to us that we know that this is what our people was doing even back then. And so for us to to take that reins today and actually teach the gospel to our people, to wake them up. We gonna face the same judgment that a lot of them would have faced if they got caught.
He said the foundations below are at the basement level of the house. The physical arrangement of the foundations, however, archaeologists had dug and found this. Tell us something about the layout, rooms above. This chimney configuration gives evidence for a large front room on the first floor with a large fireplace and 2 small rooms with the corner fireplaces in the back of the house. So that's the basement. That's the fireplace. Oh.
Yeah, it's all the way through. Yeah, you go on the other side too. Yeah, you're gonna look off on the other side. They got the rest of it over there.
Definitely the fireplace. So that's the back wall. That's right here. Oh, that's where we at right here.
Yeah, like I also know, like you were saying, they keep digging. They gonna get to them Indian burial bones. They gonna get them. Yeah, they gonna get to them Indian bones down there.
Boarding school.
Damn.
Y'all want to go down to the river? No, I want to see them. Yeah, I got sections that we can walk all the way down there.
So
down that trail.
So this is what is this the ground top? This top. This is them digging. They found stuff here. It's another level. So this is history right here. So what is it?
Sundown. Right. Violators will be prosecuted the old school way.
Uh-oh.
Hey, Shalom Israel, Most High Christ bless. Listen, this town, this whole downtown district, they labeled the Halifax downtown as a historical site, historical district. They have a lot of information out here, and right now, where we're at, this is the Underground Railroad. This is the Underground Railroad we're walking on, and it's showing pictures and documents about how much it cost to get the slaves back that ran away. That's what we left from one of the plaques that was over there. They have more that's going to be down that way.
Pawpaws are native to eastern North America and are the largest edible fruit native to the continent. So this is the largest edible fruit that grows naturally here in North America. Said they're often found in most woods and streams. Their flavor is often described as a mix of banana, mango, and sometimes hints of vanilla and citrus. Some compare it to a custard-like texture with a tropical flavor.
While walking the Underground Railroad, they have checkpoints along the way where you can stop and you can read different things. The town of Halifax was a maritime hub for the Underground Railroad, meaning a lot of our people seeking freedom to the north would have came through Halifax. They would have came to the Roanoke River. They would have tried to use the ferry to cross or even go upstream to further seek their freedom. Now, one of the main things that stood out to me as far as the Underground Railroad is the lack of information. Because they had a lot of information about the town and its bicentennial and being emancipated from England and the Halifax Resolve of 1776, which gave way to the Declaration of Independence. They had all of this great history. But the greater history was the story that wasn't told. Now, knowing this, the town of Halifax was what you would call a free black town. At its peak, there were 2,452 freed black people in this town. Free. You often hear about other towns that resemble things like this. your Mound Bayous, your Rosewoods, your Durham, North Carolina. You hear about these type of towns. They never last long. They never last long, and the history is often suppressed, right? So, at the peak of slavery in this town, it was over 10,000 slaves. Over 10,000. But it was only 149 slave owners. And the smallest plantation had 20 slaves in it.
All right, so let's head on out. We're gonna go down to the Owens house. That's our next tour. How's everything, Jeff? Talk about all the time. My mother was a kitchen.
Yeah. They own a big old farm out there. Yeah.
Alright, so before we go into Owens, I do want to point out one thing real fast and then we'll go in, because I'm hot too. Right over here, this is the Masonic Lodge. That's the Royal White Hart Lodge of Freemasons. And Halifax, just like a lot of the other towns in all over colonial North America, had very active Masonic lodges. They had a very tight fraternity. They're buried in a place of honor in the front yard there. That is Joseph Montfort. So if you went into the Montfort Archaeological Museum, that was his house. He built it. And so he's buried there because he was the founding member of the Royal White Hart Lodge and a lot of the other lodges here in eastern North Carolina. But more importantly, he was named the Grand Master of North America. He was named that by the British Masons just prior to the Revolutionary War, and he died with that title.
Wow.
Yep.
That's solid right there.
All right. So originally, the upstairs mirrored the downstairs. You had the big open passage and you had the 2 bedrooms here, and that's all that was here. So these 2 rooms and this room on the end were built, and the architectural historian thinks that they were built the same time as the house was moved, so about 1805. So 1805, remember me pointing out William R. Davy and how he owned all this property. His wife Sarah dies 1802. He loses an election in 1804. He says, I'm done. I am getting out of here. I'm going to start selling off everything. He has a family plantation where he grew up down in South Carolina.
What was the name of that?
Tivoli. And I think it's Lancaster County. I think, but don't hold me to that. My South Carolina geography is not all that great. But he decides as he's selling everything off, he's going to leave everything that he doesn't sell to his grown son, quote unquote grown son. He's probably about 18 or 19 years old. His name was Alan Jones Davy. So Alan keeps the house. He keeps part of the property. He keeps Daddy's champion racehorse named Sir Archie, who he loses in a card game. Yeah. But some of the property that he sells off are these 3 town lots here that go from where the church is today all the way to where this little yellow house is over here. And it goes all the way back to the tree line. So he sells all of this to a man named Dr. John Purrington. We think that Dr. Purrington is the one who moved this house here, because he buys all 3 of these lots for $300. A year later, he's putting the house and all of his property up for mortgage because he's overextended himself. So we think that he's moving everything and then run out of money. And so he describes the house. He describes a medicine shop. He describes a kitchen and his livestock and an enslaved woman named Hannah. And he puts all of that up for a mortgage for $1,000. Then he doesn't pay the mortgage. And a man named Isaac Hilliard gets the property and everything after that. So Isaac Hilliard was the one he owed the money to.
Right.
So he builds these 2 rooms here and this room on the end. That's a guest room. That's pretty easy. There's no fireplace in there. We interpret it as the young gentleman's room because, you know, travelers maybe coming through might want to stay in that room. These 2 rooms are kind of a mystery. This one doesn't have a window. It's a closet, basically. This one is also closet size, but it has a window. So we interpret this room as a ladies' workroom. We have a spinning wheel in there, and we have some other things in there. And then this room we don't even show. It's a closet. We use it for storage. Nah. But they did not believe in closets. Closets were a waste of space, and closets were extra rooms that they had to pay taxes on. Back then, the way that the taxes were figured up on a house, instead of it being the square footage, it was rooms and how many stories was it. So he would have had to pay taxes on these rooms. So what we think these were just extra storage, or maybe they were something that Dr. Purrington was using for like sick rooms or isolation rooms or something like that. I have my own theory. Now this is Crystal's theory. This is nobody else's theory.
Come on with it.
But after I've been reading all this stuff on these people, I kind of know them. I think that's Hannah's room.
Okay.
Because it's right, she's got a window. It's right there. There's just about enough room in there for a cot. And children's room's right here. So if she was helping out as a nanny or something like that, then she could be right there.
Right.
So that's my theory of what this room is for. But like I said, that's not the official. The official is it's a ladies' workroom. So
That makes sense, though.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's where Indian Woods is pretty close to, you know, there were like Tuscarora towns there early on.
Yeah. Yep. That's
We're gonna take a right here.
That's Highway 11 when we headed up to Virginia. Past Indian Woods. Right. 111. Sorry.
Yeah, at various times they were allied with the colony of Virginia. There was like a fort up there where they kind of cooperated with the Virginia colonial government during the colonial period. Yeah, it's complicated because some of the Haliwasaponi are part Tuscarora also.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, and I mean, really, all the tribes are intermingled because of that. You guys go down to the river yet?
We did go straight down, yeah.
Okay.
Somebody live at that house at the end?
Yeah, there's an inn holding down there. That guy, his primary residence is in Roanoke Rapids, but it's kind of like he spends his weekends there, I guess. Yeah. And at the end of this road, there's a private fishing club down there also.
That's a heck of a place to move to fish.
Yeah. Supposedly, at times, like, when the river's high, there's been water underneath his house over there before.
Wow. I'd be afraid to be like that.
Yeah. We're kind of like two cemeteries, like this. We're kind of getting to the edge of the colonial town of Halifax over here.
Okay.
And on this edge, they had like a town common. And some of that land was dedicated as a cemetery.
Okay.
And it started out as like a cemetery for like people didn't have money to be buried in the cemetery in the center of town there.
Right.
And then it kind of became a predominantly African American cemetery. But one of the graves in there, the gentleman that lived in there was worked on the ferry that used to be here, And there's an image from about 1900 that shows some people like working the ferry. I always wonder if that guy might be one of the people from that image.
Wow.
Yeah, this house was originally built down the Roanoke River, kind of near Scotland Neck.
Right. When you say that, these names are familiar to Scotland Neck. The Norfleets, the Smiths, the Ruffins.
Yeah.
They are all names that are familiar to Scotland Neck.
Yeah, that's right. And these people are buried in Scotland Neck. They're buried in the Trinity Cemetery.
Right, that's one big old church.
Yeah, in Scotland Neck.
Okay.
And so this is the only house that we manage here at the site that's named after a woman. So Sally and Billy Smith, they didn't build this house, but they purchased it in the early 19th century. It was built sort of the first decade of the 19th century. The house was built by a man named Bond, and he wound up going bankrupt, and after he went bankrupt, the Smiths purchased it. But at one point, the Smith family owned like 12,000 acres in the Roanoke Valley.
Shoot.
Yeah.
My mother's actually a Smith.
Yeah, yeah. And it's kind of a neat image of when they moved it here in 1979. So they used a crane and like basically cut it into sections to move it. And where it was located at is closer to Edwards Ferry. There's like a wildlife, like a boat launch over there.
It's down there in Scotland Neck, right?
Near Scotland Neck.
It's close to the close to where the Vantosa Kennels are.
Oh, okay.
But it's on the river. It's right on the river.
On the river.
Yeah. And so we call it a tripartite style house because it's taller in the center, and then it's got two sections that stick out on either side. These were inspired by houses that were built in Italy, like the tripartite villas in Italy. And one of the earliest houses like this was called the Grove. It was built by Wiley Jones, and that was outside of the town of Halifax. And I think because of the Grove history is one of the reasons when this became available why they tried to acquire this building to have like a tripartite house, for people to
show
view.
the design.
Yeah, and there was a lot of houses like this at one time in North Carolina, or excuse me, in Halifax County. But I mean, you can see it's gone through many changes. At one point, it had like a porch on the outside of it.
Question.
Yeah.
So, people who live here came from Italy?
No, the house is inspired by houses in Italy.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, these people, they're mostly like people that their families lived in the Roanoke Valley for a pretty long time, like big landowner, plantation owner.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You remember I showed you that that area I said my grandfather's out there in the field so well. That's that little area down there is where the ferry was. It's like it's a real narrow road, and it's like the two houses sit. It's a cottage style house, and it almost seemed like it had like one of those water wheels on the house.
Might have been like a mill or something.
Yep. I think that's where back there. That's where my family came off of the river. They call it Old River Road. So they was raised up on that farm.
Okay.
Yep.
And these people, they owned fisheries. They were mostly, the crops that were being grown was like wheat, corn. They were salted pork. These are things that they're shipping out of their plantation. Also, like salted fish as well. Tobacco, cotton. There was 266 enslaved individuals that were in the will that belonged to William Smith when he passed away. So it kind of gives you like that. There's only like there's less than 200 people in Halifax today.
Right.
Like this guy had like as many people as live in Halifax. So these were major, big time like plantation owners on the Roanoke River.
Like I say, the name is those two names alone speak
common
volume.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and they're common names just the whole Roanoke Valley. Big time. And a lot of those families were like very interconnected too.
Right.
Let's go inside and check it out.
Go. Yeah, the Smiths.
Yeah, I was happy to get in here.
Oh, yeah.
See.
Yes.
Oh yeah. So this building is just like some of the other ones we went into. It's mostly original antiques, so don't pick up anything.
Okay.
There's one piece of furniture that, don't ask me how I know. If you try and pull a drawer open, the whole thing like falls apart. So, yeah, there's some. I got it back together, but there's a man named Andrew Jackson who's an African American education leader, and the Andrew Jackson School here in Halifax is named after him.
Right over here.
Yeah, that school is named after him. He was a blacksmith, and tradition holds that he was also a blacksmith that helped put some of the plating on the Ram Albemarle as well.
It's funny that you said something about Edwards. What did you say? Edwards
Ferry.
Edwards Ferry. And I always wondered why the road that I lived on was called Edwards Fork Road, because it leads down to that area.
Yeah.
That's tough. It's Edwards Fork. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
After emancipation, the enslaved were pushed across the river into the swamp, across the Tar River into the swamp lands, the marshlands over there. And so there was a guy named, his last name was Prince.
Okay.
But yeah, he was integral in founding that town. You know, Princeville is the oldest town incorporated by free African Americans in the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it got his name because he was integral in that.
Okay.
Yep. I can't remember his first name, but it was something Prince.
Okay.
Yep, but yeah, that's where the name changed from Freedom Hill to Princeville.
Yeah, there's someone named Prince in that Hilltop Cemetery up here on the hill too.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, might be, yeah, that's 2 times now, because the Miles Howard, you know what I'm saying? Then you gotta check out Prince.
I wouldn't doubt it. You know what I'm saying? Because like you said, how do you say that thing? It's like a area for those that could not afford to be buried.
Yeah, that's how it started out. And then it kind of became like an African American cemetery.
Right. I would think that because everything here is historical, that they may have put historical figures here also.
Yeah. And this river, this is there's just so much interconnection with this river.
Yep.
Because it was a major transportation route for a long time.
So, going back to the independence from Great Britain.
Yeah.
Britain was sending over, I'll say, people that had to do sentences.
Oh, like convicts?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
that was his name, Turner Prince.
Turner.
Okay, his name is Turner Prince.
I think Georgia was a colony that was kind of founded that way.
Okay.
Kind of like Australia.
Okay.
But there were also some indentured servants that had terms like that also.
Right.
That were here in America as well.
Gotcha. So after serving your sentence, you could go back to Great Britain.
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
Yeah.
But those that established the 1776 independence, they chose to stay here and to gain their independence.
Kind of like in 1777, they made basically a law that if you were a loyalist, you had to leave the colony.
Okay.
So up until that, you were, I guess, somewhat tolerated. But in 77, you had to sign an oath to the United States. And if you didn't sign it, you had to leave the colony. So there's a lot of loyalists that leave North Carolina in 1777. There's a guy named John Hamilton, who was a merchant here in Halifax. And he's connected with some of these there's these Scottish tobacco firms that have warehouses all over the East Coast.
Yeah.
He's a loyalist, and he lives in Halifax. And he leaves here in 1777. In fact, he either owns or he buys a ship, and he brings a bunch of loyalists with him back to New York City, which was kind of like a British base at the time. And in 1781, he comes back here with Cornwallis's army. And at that point, he's actually leading a regiment of loyalists.
Okay.
And he's served sort of as like a scout. Him and his men serve as a scout for like Bannister Tarleton and his forces when they kind of lead the way into Halifax. He was familiar with the neighborhood. That's the Andrew Jackson School that we were talking about.
Right. So I know you said in like the 1790s, around about 3% of the African Americans were, had their freedom and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you were mentioning Miles. So after the war, Britain did convince a lot of the enslaved people to fight against their enslavers and things like that.
Yeah.
What happened to them?
So there's a number, like basically Britain offered amnesty for anyone that could cross the lines.
Mm-hmm.
Any enslaved person that could cross the lines. And in different capacities, they even offered the opportunity to, if you fight, we'll give you your freedom. And so there was, did you guys get to see the Montfort House yet?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, at the beginning of the war, Dunmore, who was the governor of Virginia, created what they called the Ethiopian Regiment. And basically, he said for any enslaved person or servant, if you fight with me, you'll have your freedom. And so there's all kinds of people that flee the what Dunmore called the rebel line, and crossed over and joined this Ethiopian regiment. And they wind up fighting at a battle up in Norfolk, Battle of Great Bridge. And Dunmore's army winds up not holding Norfolk. They wind up retreating back to a ship. But at that battle, there were free African Americans on the pro-independence side, and then there were also like Dunmore's Ethiopian. So you had some,
fighting against
African,
each other.
Black Americans in different situations, And a lot of the free Black Americans identified a little more with the independence cause. And so those are the men that mostly joined like the Continental Army. And about 3% of the North Carolina Continental Line was made up of free African Americans when they did a roster at White Plains up in New York. But yeah, there were, and a lot of them came from Halifax. Like of the counties that recruited free African Americans, the highest proportion came from these northeastern counties near the Virginia line. And part of that is because we already had so many free African Americans here.
Up north.
Yeah, they were fleeing up there.
Yeah, and there were laws that both in Virginia and in North Carolina that once you were emancipated, that you had to leave the colony. So you have families on like both sides of that line, the Virginia line. One of these men, John Chavis, there's a park in Raleigh that's named after him.
Chavis Park.
Yeah, and so he's got a pretty awesome quote actually that I've got written down. So after the American Revolution, he fights in the American Revolution. He was there was a guy named James Milner here who's buried in the cemetery. He had this the best library around, and so John Chavis was an indentured servant to him, and basically he fights in the American Revolution in a Virginia regiment, and then after the war he goes on and he starts school in Raleigh. He's a pastor. He's arguably the first black Presbyterian pastor in the United States. He goes to school at Princeton. But in the 1830s, when they create the new state constitution, they also take away the right to vote. And John Chavis had educated like politicians' kids, and had basically, he had access to people that he could write to. And there's a letter that he writes that I need to find that letter because it is powerful what he says to Wiley Magnum. He says, "Tell them if I'm black, I'm free-born American and a revolutionary soldier, and therefore ought not to be thrown entirely out of the scale of notice." which I think is pretty awesome that he's writing that to a senator. Right. He had actually taught Wiley Magnum's son in his school in Raleigh, so he's educating black and white kids in the same school.
Sheesh.